Good morning and welcome to today's artist talk with ArtWalk in the Square. My name's Kate Taylor. I'm actually the chair of the Artist Network, and we're a not-for-profit that helps artists with the business of art and providing educational sessions, showing opportunities, and it's been, of course, very instrumental this year in helping the artist community become digital and getting online. And the way that you can see the ArtWalk in the Square online store is a prime example of what we've been doing to work with the artist community to help them kind of broaden their reach. So, of course, being online, one of the things that we're all missing is that face-to-face contact, certainly for art lovers and collectors to really be able to get a feeling for the artist behind the art, have that conversation, which is one of the things that's so amazing in when we sort of connect with in real life. So today my guest is going to be Susan Friedman, who I just really love her work. I love the way she kind of manages her mark making. I particularly personally like her portraits or her figurative work. So we're going to see if Susan is here. She has requested to be in my video, and I would love to have you in our video. So Susan's going to come on board, and then we will have a quick chat.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you.
Looks like you're in your studio.
I am. And I just did was involved with the ArtWalk Live, and it's so busy getting ready for it. And I loved it. But I just love afterwards too, when things quiet down and I could just come back down in my studio where it's quiet and start creating new things. Yeah.
Susan's talking about, as part of ArtWalk in the Square, artists had the opportunity to have one day, which was last Saturday, to set up a tent in your backyard or your front yard or whatever. And I did that as well at Art Alchemy. And it was really interesting. I don't know if you found too, it's been a long time since you've had that connection with the public. And all of a sudden, normally you do these outdoor shows, you're kind of like, you're rote. You know what you're doing. And I thought, oh my goodness.
I know. Well, also it was different doing, I have a side yard and it worked. I was worried also about the numbers of people and keeping it safe, of course. And it worked out really, really well. And I knew I was missing the contact with people, but it really made me realize how much I love that, just the conversations about art all day long, people showing an interest, people being moved by things. I loved it. And you get to talk about your process, and it's just a really, really fun way to experience art. I did miss not having all my neighbors around me. And every year at the Art Walks, I meet new people, new artists. And it's such a supportive, wonderful group through Artist Network that I did miss that. But on the other hand, I love doing it. I also realized I was exhausted at the end of it. And I realized I did 3 days last year. 3 days I loved. You get so psyched up and excited.
I know.
But I was so tired after one day. I couldn't believe it.
Well, I think you're right. I think it's just we're kind of a little bit out of practice. But I did really love the Instagram Live that you did when you took a tour through your garden and the way that the light changed on the pieces and stuff like that.
Yeah, I loved it. And
that was really cool.
Thank you. I loved seeing my work on the walls, on the fence, and it just changed the whole time. And I had my daughter there to help me kind of take that video, so that was kind of nice when there was a little bit of a lull in the middle of the afternoon. But it was fun seeing that, because in the tent, you are dependent as well on the light, but it does change and just sort of get darker by the end of the afternoon. This was totally different. It was just that different, wonderful quality of light in the later afternoon too that I could appreciate.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting too, because I have to ask, would you have done this a year ago? Like, would it have occurred to you to set your stuff outside and go on live and all that stuff? And then,
no,
I think it's a really wonderful way of, hopefully we'll all hope that we'll get back to kind of normal when we'll be doing outdoor shows again. But I think that it'll be great to be able to augment it with things like these sort of live tours or interviews, and really expands your reach and allows more collectors to see your work and understand sort of what you're trying to do, right?
Exactly. And I also appreciated meeting my neighbors, more of my neighbors. And that was really
me too.
for them to see kind of, this is who I am. This is what I do. It's my passion. It's my life. It's, and it was nice to be able to share that. So I appreciated that as well. So
let's talk about your work. I loved reading about how it was sort of inspired by sort of that meditative quality in yoga, which I absolutely get out of your work. Although I have to say, of course, the one that I personally love the best is Belonging. I think it's called Belonging, which is it's still tranquil, but it's really bright. Yeah, like it's got really great colors.
Yeah, well, that's a real shift for me because I've always worked with layers, and I used to start with sort of an acrylic ground and then maybe layer in other materials with the intention that's still just the ground and that another image will come on top of it. And so my ground could be things I'm raging about. It could be all kinds of things with how I'm dealing with the world. But the end of the product would be something much calmer, something I get to with more muted colors and that sort of thing. And something shifted over the last few months for me, definitely, in that I'm enjoying doing collages for collage's sake, and then just letting them sit for a while and then seeing what of my reference material will speak to that. So I have a whole load of things, images I'd like to work with. So drawings from live models or photographs, again, of people or places and my travels or just my neighborhood. And then I see what image was going to suit that and try not to cover up the collage entirely. So I'm integrating them. And it comes from, I realized there was a bit of a metaphor there for me around the images and the figures being one with their backgrounds or their context, so that we can't really separate ourselves from each other, our responsibilities in the world. And there's just so much going on with that I think it really spoke to that. And so belonging was probably one of the first pieces that I felt was really successful, that I got to do that. But I didn't overwork it. I didn't cover up all the background just for a nice image, but I really let the background and the image speak to each other and integrate. So that one's in the gallery, so I can't show it here, but I can.
It's interesting though. I know a few other artists, like Sherry Hart and Mike Smalley too, where so much of the creative process and the exploration happens at the very beginning with either writing or drawing or whatever. And then by the end of the day, it's completely covered up. And it's interesting because it's almost like this secret message that the artist has kind of put in there. And yet the audience, maybe the art viewer, will get the understanding or the idea of the message, but they can't actually see the message, which is really kind of cool.
Yeah. But I think it also informs it, right? So if you're starting even with a really rich ground of reds, and I don't work a lot with red, but I use red a lot as my ground. But I think that really informs the piece, though. It comes through, even if you don't intend it to. It does inform it, and the raging too will inform the message behind it. And again, it has, if people want to know what it is and talk to me about it, I'm always happy to talk about it and give them.
But do you ever document that? Like, do you ever kind of have a this is the short story of belonging or whatever in terms of different? It would be kind of cool to do a book or something to talk about the different stages and what you're thinking. I don't know. Sorry, this is not my interview. It's supposed to be yours. Sorry.
I appreciate that. That's a great idea. What I do is I do journal, though. I do sort of art journal. So along with my thumbnail sketches, I'll have, some thoughts and ideas. And sometimes when I'm just sort of stuck with what to do, I start with a book that I'm, and then just write my ideas of where I'm at. And that helps take me to the place. So then I know that work informs it, but it's more of a private thing. But yeah, I could be writing that and putting that together in that way. That's a good idea.
This actually was a purely selfish idea because I would just be really curious to see the process of what happens. And I used to love that when I was, I used to share a studio with Sherry Hart, and just watching her kind of where she started versus where she ended. It was just such a fascinating thing to be a bit of a voyeur.
Well, I love that process myself, because that's just it. I love that I don't know what it's going to end up to be. You always have this intention of, I love this image. I love that pose of that model or whatever. But I love that it doesn't always turn out that way. And that, especially starting with the collage, doing something that abstract or trying to do some looser abstract work, it just, it's great not to have that much control over it. And then in the end, you sort of finesse and do and see what's working and step back and do that whole push-pull thing with the art where you're adding things and taking away and until it just works. And then it's not so cerebral. You're not thinking, what does it have to be, but how does it feel?
It's emotional.
It's emotional. And yes, we all go with ideas that we have and things we know about composition and color and what works and what doesn't work. But really, it's just really in the end, how is it working as a piece? And it tells you what it needs. The painting tells you what it needs versus you telling, demanding it has to be something, because those paintings just don't work out as well.
I know, they never work. And it's so funny because I learned that very early on doing commissions, that if I tried to consciously think about this is what the client wants, the piece just didn't ever have the right energy, right? So it's kind of like, you just need to do it the way it needs to be done, and then you end up with a much stronger piece in the end. Yeah. Well, do you want to show us something you got in your studio? And oh,
sure,
sorry,
sure.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I was just going to say, when I have a commission, I often will say, you know, this is the intent, but it's not going to be exactly like that. And if you don't want it at the end, that's okay. But
yeah,
this is,
I do that too. Yeah.
I can't control it entirely. So yeah,
it's like children. You try and mold it, but you can't. You're not totally responsible for the end result.
Yeah. So this is one of the other collages that was done, a smaller one that's done in that style. But then I flip and go with, you know, who am I inspired by today? And I'm thinking about Milton Avery. So I'll do, you know, another figure that's just based on one of my other models. And this is one of the collages that I really liked as well, besides Belonging, that also I thought worked that way, where I did a collage and then I had this beautiful photograph from a friend's travels, actually, that she gave me permission to share. And I intended to do it in all muted colors because that's what the photograph was. It was stunning. It was just shadows and very light colors, almost monochromatic. But I did this collage and intending to put these figures in it, and it just didn't suit that. So I just waited, and then, you know, the aha moment came, and I decided that this was the image for that painting, and it came really easily. And again, I was just happy that I felt I didn't overdo it, which you know, so easy to do with paintings.
It's beautiful. Yeah, I love that. Well, of course, I love those colors too. The shapes and the lines.
Yeah, and this is a collage waiting for a picture to happen. I haven't decided. I thought I had an image in mind for it, and it wasn't quite right. So we'll see what that becomes. So that isn't done yet. That's just the collage that I started, and we'll see what comes from that. And yeah, I'm exploring different colors a lot. That's the other thing. I've been inspired so much by everyone else in Artist Network and the colors. Like, your colors are brilliant. And I've been exploring that a lot over these months at home. So I think
it's interesting, isn't it? How subtle that influence is. You know, like I find, obviously I share a studio with a number of other artists, including Lisa Hickey. And she was working on a piece, and we're obviously working independently, doing our own thing. And all of a sudden we were photographing work together. It's like, oh, that's so interesting. It's the same color palette. Like, it's of course, a very different execution. And I don't think either of us had realized we'd morphed our color palettes a little bit.
Isn't that great, though? I love that.
Yeah, it's really cool. I love that too.
Yeah. And at the ArtWalks, that's what I miss also, of course, now with what's happening, is that I am usually very inspired, and I think the colors of other people, and maybe being on social media more and looking at stuff has influenced me that way in terms of my color palette, because I was always kind of a blue, earthy, orange gal. Like, that's what I was always doing. And all of a sudden I'm drawn to like these wonderful violets and yellows, and that yellow green that I never used before. I was doing an oil, actually. Started a landscape, and I discovered like green gold, and I have all this in my, you know,
amazing color,
and I love it. And then of course you don't want to overuse it, but it's just so much fun you're always discovering new things, you know. That's what I love about it.
Well, and it's funny because I just discovered, you know, obviously my work's pretty bright, but I have like a kit that I take with me, so if I go to the cottage I can just grab this thing of paints. So I guess there was a color in there that I don't know, maybe I might have got it actually from Sqiare, because sometimes I get stuff, you know, like when they come at the artist project, they give you a bag and you have colors that you wouldn't normally use. And so I used it last weekend, and I'm like, oh my God, it's an amazing color. Like, I can't believe I've had it since the artist project and I've never opened it. But yeah, then you have to be careful you don't kind of put it in everything.
I know, exactly. But that's sort of lockdown too. It's like I'm going through, we were all ordering supplies online and things weren't coming. So I had to go through and decide, you know what, I've got a lot here. I better start using what I've got. And all of a sudden I'm using, and I was just playing with some, you know, water soluble crayons and all sorts of other materials. And it's fun. So I'm actually using all the stuff I have too, because
Yeah, me too. We've actually started, I call it like the toy box at the studio too, where there's things I know I'm not going to use. Like, let's just everybody put stuff in there. And if you feel like playing or exploring, then you kind of have this place where you can just kind of go grab some stuff and
that's
put it
great.
back.
That's wonderful. That must be great.
Yeah.
In the studio.
We just started, but I think it'll be fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds wonderful.
Okay. I think we're pretty much at the end of our time. Okay. But do you want to let everybody know what your social media handle is?
Yes, it's my Instagram is Susan Friedman Art, and www.susanfriedman.ca is my website. And I'm on the Eventi site for the ArtWalk. So
Yeah, so make sure you go and see the work. I mean, it's really great with the Eventity site too, to be able to kind of go and just really take your time. Sorry, I think that's my timer. Stop. Sorry. Okay, so I'm supposed to ask you one of these quick questions to throw you off guard. So if you could only take one tool and one color with you to a desert island, what would they be?
Would probably still be blue. It would be all around me. And one tool, well, I have my hands, so I don't.
Yeah, I'm assuming you're going to have those with you.
Yeah, a palette knife.
Yeah. Okay, so you and I can share a desert island together because we're like sabbatical.
Great questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And you'll be able to see this video as well on the Eventity site because we're eventually going to post them all there. And also on ArtWalk in the Square. If you've missed it later, it'll be on our IGTV. So thank you so much, Susan. And yeah, I look forward to seeing how that unfinished collage ends up panning out.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, that was wonderful. Thank you so much to Susan and for everyone for joining us. These will be posted on our IGTV site for our Walk in the Square, and they will also be on the Eventity site, and they will eventually be on our YouTube site, which we're working on right now. But thanks so much. Next interview is going to be at 2 o'clock today, so I encourage you to come by and check it out. And thanks so much for everyone for joining us.